Hi everyone! In this video, we'll try to find the answer to the question, what is the difference between Scrum and Kanban? Let's begin. This is a very comprehensive topic. Both frameworks have many options and features, and whole books have been written about it. But in this video, we'll be concise and talk about the core of both development methods and the difference between them. Let's start with brief definitions and then move on to an example of each. First of all, both Scrum and Kanban are used in the Agile software development methodology. This means that they have a lot in common, for example, lightweight requirements such as user story, meetings such as daily meetings, or self-organizing cross-functional teams. The next common feature is the development model. Both methodologies are incremental. An important difference is that Scrum is iterative development, while for Kanban, iterative development is optional and mostly ignored. Both methodologies have their own nuances, artifacts, and roles. But in this video, we're going to look at just two of what we think are the key core differences. For Scrum, it is sprint and velocity. And for Kanban, it is the Kanban board and work-in-progress limit. We have separate videos on Kanban, Scrum, Agile, and iterative and incremental software development methodologies. Therefore, if you're interested in more theoretical aspects, you can watch those videos. This video is simplified to show the key core differences in using Kanban and Scrum. And it is the best to demonstrate it with examples. Let's start with Scrum. It all starts with a product. The first version of the product is available for end users. They can fund the product and buy it. But there are plans to improve the user experience and provide more features and functionality. All these plans are written in the form of user stories on the board called product backlog. And here is the first difference between Scrum and Kanban. Each user story has an estimate in the form of story points. What is it for? As we emphasized at the beginning of the video, Scrum is iterative development. An iteration in Scrum is called sprint. Each team determines the duration of the sprint. A duration of 2 weeks is often chosen. This means that every 2 weeks, the team must deploy a new increment to production. If there is a limit in time, then there is also a limit to the amount of work that can be done in the time. And this brings us to the next term we mentioned at the beginning, velocity. We will now study how it is determined in this video. To put it very simply, this is the number of story points the team is able to develop, test, and deliver in one sprint. In our case, it is 12 story points. This means that at the meeting called sprint planning, the team will choose user stories to work on in the next sprint, and has a velocity limit of 12 story points. Accordingly, the team planned to develop 4 user stories in total. 1 user story of 5 story points, 1 user story of 3 story points, and 2 user stories of 2 story points each. Now that the sprint backlog is formed, the sprint begins. The active development phase begins, which will last 2 weeks. The team will have a meeting every day and use a burn-down chart to monitor whether progress is on schedule. Developers will do their magic. After that, the testers will do their magic. We simplify the scheme and show the happy pass, when all tickets are developed and tested without problems. In fact, bugs can be reported and tickets can be returned to previous columns, whether to get out of the sprint at all. Sometimes an entire sprint can fail and everything starts over. In our case, everything went successfully. Almost 2 weeks have passed and the sprint is coming to an end. All 4 tickets went through the development stage and the testing stage and are ready to be delivered to end users. All user stories, all tickets, features, and bugs that were fixed form one big increment. The new working version of the website is available for end users. All the changes are related to the cart page. Now users are able to apply coupons and change the product quantity, size, or color. The version of the website changes from 1.0 to 1.1. This is how the last day of the sprint went. The sprint was successful. All planned stories were delivered. What happens after that? Everything starts from the beginning. A new sprint is planned, 1.2, which will again last 2 weeks, which has a velocity of 12 story points. Accordingly, new features are added to the sprint backlog and the active development phase begins again. This is what Scrum iterative incremental development looks like, with fixed iterations called sprints, and a fixed number of velocity, features, or user stories that the team can develop and deliver in 2 weeks. Time to look at the Kanban process. As we mentioned earlier, Kanban and Scrum have some similarities. We also start with the first basic version of the website. And we also plan to improve the user experience and many new features and user stories. And here the difference begins. Kanban is a continuous process. It has no iterations. Accordingly, there is no velocity and story points are not required. Of course, the estimation process is present, but it affects the priority of the tickets rather than the planning of the increment. Stories are sorted according to priority in the backlog column. At the very top is the most important story. It is already groomed and ready for development. The next 3 columns in progress, testing, and deployment should have work in progress limits 2, 1, and 2 respectively. What does it mean? As we can see now, the in progress column is empty. This means that the developers can take the first 2 stories into development. They can't take more stories because the work in progress limit is 2. In place of the stories removed from the backlog, new stories with the highest priority are added. The development of the second story lasted 3 days. The developers have done their magic and submitted the story for testing. Now they have the capacity to take 1 more story into development. They again take the story with the highest priority, and a new story is added to the backlog as the highest priority. Developers work on 2 stories while testers test 1. When the testers have tested, they move to the story to the next column, deployment. The fact that a deployment column has a work in progress limit of 2, it does not mean that exactly 2 stories are needed in order to release them. If the team believes that the story is complete and deserves to become an increment, they can deploy only 1 of them for production. As a result, users will receive a new feature, and they will be able to use it actively. Due to the release of a new increment, the version of the product will change, and it will become 1.1, and the story will go to the Done column. The Kanban is an ongoing process, so the work continues. Tickets are moving from column to column. When something is present in the deployment column, team decides if the feature is worth to be deployed. If not, then it waits for the next ticket. In our example, there is a limit of 2 tickets, so when the second ticket will be in the deployment column, the second increment should be released to end users. Work flows continuously through the system instead of being organized into distinct time boxes. Scrum sprints have start and stop dates, whereas Kanban is an ongoing process. Kanban boards are more flexible with regard to tasks and timing. Tasks can be reprioritized, reassigned, and updated as needed. We hope our visualization will help you understand the difference between Scrum and Kanban. As we mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is a very comprehensive topic. Both frameworks have many options and features, and whole books have been written about it. We have separate videos on Kanban, Scrum, Agile, and iterative and incremental software development methodologies. Therefore, if you're interested in more theoretical aspects, you can watch those videos. You can pause the video and read one more time our simplified definitions and characteristics of both methods and frameworks. We hope to see you in the next video, and that's our answer to the question, what is the difference between Scrum and Kanban?